Welcome to our World Food Forum Masterclass on fostering innovation and entrepreneurship for sustainable development and particularly for our agri-food systems. I want to give a special shout out to everybody who's watching from UN Web TV and FAO.org live stream. My name is Victoria Slivkoff. I am the Executive Managing Director of Extreme Tech Challenge, the world's largest platform and marketplace for showcasing the most innovative and purpose-driven companies tackling the UN SDGs, and now we're active in over 100 countries. Our mission is to support these entrepreneurs by giving them the rocket fuel to achieve success. And there are 4 particular things: global visibility, access to venture capital investment, corporate strategic partnerships, and world-class mentorship. So we're here as part of this UN World Food Forum to get young people involved in entrepreneurship to build a better food future. So before we get started, we have some exciting welcome message from the World Food Forum champion, Bonita Sharma. So let's roll the tape.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bonita Sharma, and I'm from Nepal. I am the co-founder and CEO of Social Change Makers and Innovators Sochai, which is a youth-led nonprofit that is focused on improving health and nutrition of people, particularly women, children, and girls through innovation, education, and entrepreneurship. I am a World Food Forum champion, and I'm really proud to be associated in this global initiative to raise awareness on global agri-food systems. I believe that us young people are not just the future, but we are the change makers of present. And given the right opportunity, we have so much potential to take a lead at every level of food system. I am very delighted to have this opportunity to introduce the World Food Forum Innovation Masterclasses, which are virtual events where experts and youth leaders are able to share stories of actionable solutions that can help transform our agri-food systems. Through presentations, panel discussion, roundtables, talks, and stories, these masterclasses aim to engage, educate, inspire, and mobilize a global audience to take action for creating a better food future. Today's masterclass is on fostering innovation and entrepreneurship for sustainable development, agri-food systems transformation with Kimbal Musk, Bill Tai, and Nicole Shanahan. Featuring renowned entrepreneurs, investors, and catalysts for innovation, this masterclass will share lessons and tips on scaling up innovative entrepreneurship with positive social impact. Award-winning startups will also share their stories and successes and challenges that they have faced as a young businesses, and the audience will have a chance for a live Q&A with a distinguished panel. As someone who started the journey of nutrition by prioritizing innovation and entrepreneurship, today I'm very much excited and looking forward to learn from all the experts and change makers in the masterclass. Now, I would like to pass over to our moderator, Victoria Slivkoff, Executive Managing Director of Extreme Tech Challenge. Over to you, Victoria.
Thank you, Bonita. Thank you for your inspiring words and welcome back. And she mentioned the purpose of this conversation is to educate and inspire our young entrepreneurial audience and offering them some, the folks watching, some practical and actionable advice, and hopefully encourage you to engage in more activities to help transform our global agri-food systems. So I've been really looking forward to this conversation and super excited to have such a great panel to learn from and to hear from. So it is my pleasure to introduce Kimbal Musk. He's the co-founder and chairman of Big Green, the kitchen restaurant group and Square Roots. Nicole Shanahan, she's the founder and president of Bia Echo Foundation. Bill Tai, co-founder of Extreme Tech Challenge, partner emeritus of Charles River Ventures, and a legendary angel investor with an amazing track record of 23 IPOs. Bill, I noted that I missed one in my intro on Saturday. And also we're featuring 3 Extreme Tech Challenge startup finalists from our 2021 and 2022 class. First, we have Sar Safra. He's a CEO and co-founder of BeWise. Femi Aiki, He's the co-founder of Food Locker, Femi Aiki, and Kieran Sway, co-founder of Sophie's Bionutrients. So let's jump right into this discussion. So I want to start with you guys, Bill, Kimbal, and Nicole. Speaking specifically to the young people in the audience, please share with us how you got started as entrepreneurs and what lessons now you would give to your younger self as you've seen sort of the investment and the micro environment change. So let's start with Nicole.
Sure, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. So I think my journey really started when I was 12 years old, and I was fascinated by the world of innovation. In particular, there were TV commercials in the 90s playing in the US that discussed filing for patents and the value of a new idea and how those new ideas really evolve our experience as a society. And so I decided at the age of 12, I was definitely going to be a patent lawyer. The problem is I didn't know any lawyers in my family, and I didn't really have much mentorship or guidance on how to get to law school. So thankfully, at that same time, AOL and dial-up internet really became available in the United States, and I was able to conduct research. And so my first piece of advice is the value of good research. There's no replacement for getting good information and really vetting your information sources and feeling like you have enough information to take that next right step. So I eventually found my way to law school, and it was really through a sequence of getting the right education, but also finding the right mentors and opportunities. My second piece of advice is work for free to get experience. Don't be afraid to take internships or volunteer opportunities where you exchange your effort for exposure and experience. Because that first internship I got where I worked for free at a patent office was probably the most important first career step I took on the path to entrepreneurship. So after I got that 1 year of internship experience, I was then qualified to apply for paid positions within law firms. And it was that paid experience that then made me understand how to conduct myself in an environment with a degree of professionality. And I think that, you know, really foundationally for entrepreneurs, you need to understand your market, your industry, your clients, and your coworkers. So, so that piece then, you know, sets you up for getting whatever qualification you need, and then a community. And so these are really the building blocks then for thinking about change. So with the greater exposure in your industry, you start to see areas where you can make improvements. Entrepreneurship or entrepreneurs, it really comes from this desire to make things better. And it was my experience working in the patent industry that I saw that there was a lack of efficiency in managing intellectual property assets, also trading those assets. And it's something that is important to every innovator, every university patent office, every law office, and every entrepreneur is how do I manage my creative intellectual property? And so Clear Access IP was born from this desire to make it cheaper, make it faster, and make it move more quickly between institutions. And so I created Clear Access IP on this ideal of a world where ideas moved more seamlessly from the creator into industry. So, you know, I think in terms of, the value of understanding all of the pieces to the journey. And even today where I sit, I think about, mistakes that I made along the way, but also it's really correcting for those mistakes that I think tells the most important story in the end. And if I could give one piece of advice on how to manage picking up after those mistakes is recognize that there's value in every mistake. Some of the greatest lessons really came from the failures at Clear Access IP related to mostly engineering challenges, because we created an AI that studied every invention ever created. And when you're really at the cutting edge of any field, you have to expect that you're not going to get it right the first time or the second time, or even in our case, we created 120 different models for our machine learning, our machine learning product. And, there's going to be times where it feels like you're never going to get there, but you always have to look at each incremental improvement within the context of what you can provide to your market. So I think that's, be prepared for making mistakes, keep a close eye on how much those mistakes cost, and then always iterate for making less expensive mistakes in the future.
Mm-hmm. Well, those are really some really good advice. Kimbal, I'm going to head to you next. I think he's on mute. I think Kimbal, you're on mute. Mm-hmm.
No, I was saying that, thank you guys for having me, by the way. This is fun. Just listening to Nicole, it's funny to think about similar lessons I would give to my younger self. I think one of the big ones that I agree with was when I was younger, I really didn't embrace understanding the environment, which is another way of saying researching the opportunity. And I really went headfirst into everything I did. And it actually did work out for me, but it was very, very difficult. And I could, with more thought, and I would say more research, more just understanding the environment and opportunity, it would have just been easier, because you end up making so many mistakes that you learn from. And I agree with that entirely. But I think the lesson I've learned over time is to really, really understand the next step you have to make as best as possible. Mm-hmm. But also the other learning is, don't think about the step after that. So you think two or three steps ahead, but I like to make sure that I'm on mission, which is like a 50-year thing. I like to think that I in terms of in the nonprofit world, for example, I work with Big Green, and our mission is growing food changes lives. We're here to help people with nutrition security, mental health, exposing them to nature, and also opening their eyes to the volatility that comes from climate change. That doesn't change. That's like 50 years or longer. That's forever. And then what's the next step? And it's quite a hard discipline to not get caught up in, what's going to happen in 3 months or 6 months or 10 months or 12 months. But the truth is, you just don't know. The landscape changes so much in our world. COVID's a great example where if you plan too far out, you certainly didn't plan for that. So I've learned really to think about what's my immediate step to focus on and get as much research on that as possible before being forced to make the decision. The other lesson that I would give to my younger self is to really do something that brings you alive, that's your passion. My first business was a house painting business. You're painting houses, and it was a college business. I made a lot of money. I came over to this country with no money at all, and I was like sitting around with for a 19-year-old a lot of money, and it just didn't do it for me. It just kind of crushed my soul of going and doing this business. And so I really work hard on my passion, but I didn't really figure out my passion until later. And so the piece of advice I would give to folks is, if you don't know what your passion is, find people you love working with. And that might be a path to finding your passion. But if you love working with a group of people, you will have a lot of fun and you'll give yourself time to figure out your passion. Don't put too much pressure on it, because it'll come. It'll come when it comes. And being around great people, you'll never regret. And that also relates to being paid. If you get a job offer for a certain amount of money, and you have another option to work with people you love or something you're passionate about, always take the option with people you love or something you're passionate about, because when you're young, you aren't really earning that much money anyway, and you're going to spend it all anyway. So the real value you're building for yourself is the connections you're making with great people, or working in stuff you're passionate about. The other thing I would say is, and I consider myself a very risk-taking in my 20s, would be take more risks. This is not the time to worry about your mortgage. It's not the time to worry about your retirement. This is not the time to think about the future too much. This is the time to dive in and take risks and learn like crazy, work your ass off, work your butt off, whatever the right term is to use. But and honestly, if you're doing it with the right people and great people, you will just have the best time ever. Even if you don't succeed financially, you'll be setting yourself up for the future, where you'll find an opportunity at some point that really combines your passion, helping the sustainability goals, and that classic saying, the money will come. Then finally, failure is something to it's a phrase my brother gave me, so I got to give him credit. Learning to fail and being okay with it is actually a very important part of building great businesses. Don't be afraid of failure. Expect to fail all the time, and just plan to learn from it, and get used to it, and then you can iterate and get better.
I think that last point is so important, because in Silicon Valley, failure is celebrated in a way that you're earning your badge and moves you on to the next thing. But I don't think that's the case all around the world. And sometimes you're a little too careful, like you said, not taking enough risk. So I think those are real nuggets of gold. And again, double and tripling down on working with great people, and bring great folks together. And like you said, the passion will follow, the business will follow, and good things always come out of it. So yeah, very sound advice. Bill.
Yeah, I'll just kind of wrap up this section with Kimbal and Nicole and my journey. Very, very similar. I think it's passion, timing, and showing up at the right beach. So I think, for me, it was kind of, I had this like a little electronics kit, and I started as a phone hacker, in that era where people would build these boxes to kind of make a tone frequency generator to hack into phone systems. And that led me into electrical engineering. And I think, the educational component, depending on what you're doing, does matter a little bit. You can learn it on the fly over time for sure. But I think I use the surfing analogy all the time, and I think Kimbal's point about failing, taking risk and failing. If you're going to learn to surf, you're going to go and you're going to splash around and just flail around for a long time until you figure out how to ride and what timing's about. And as I described, surfing and entrepreneurship, very similar. You can work really hard and get nowhere if you show up at the wrong beach at the wrong time. And so if you imagine a wave cruising across the ocean, you're either in front of it, behind it, or on it. And if you're behind it, you will never, ever, ever swim up the back and catch up to everybody else. So forget it if the market's moving. If you're way too in front, you can paddle really hard and just wear yourself out and nothing happens. So if you're right at the right time, you paddle once and you're riding. So pick the right beach, fail a lot first by splashing around, trying to figure out how to move around on the water, and then use your instinct and learning and what Nicole was talking about, kind of, know your market, know your environment when you want to make that bet on the big ride. But it's going to take a lot of splashing around first and this acceptance of failure, because when you go to surf, you're not going to ride, in my case, for years. So you just have to get used to it, and then show up at the right time when you feel like it's right and you're passionate about it.
And I want us to think about a little bit about how do you democratize opportunities across border, and that's a big part of our work at Extreme Tech Challenge. The fact that we're in over 100 countries, and an entrepreneur space, it's nuanced, right, depending where you are. So speaking to the youth entrepreneurs is in certain parts of the world that don't have the mature infrastructure that we have in Silicon Valley, and access to capital and access to entrepreneurial training. What advice do you have for them to get started and to find the right people, like Nicole said, find the right mentors, right? To find your own tribe to get going. So why don't I start with Nicole for again? Mm-hmm.
Sure. As someone, I grew up on, I spent a few years on welfare and really didn't have a ton of resources. And my mother is from Southern China, and she's an immigrant to the US. So we have, in our family, this really deep identity of cobbling together a solution with very little. So I think that one of the benefits, I think, of being in a country where there is struggle and where there is quite a bit of challenge in navigating industry, there's also even a greater opportunity and a need for your expertise and your competence, your deep competence, and your passion to make change. And when I think of the delta and opportunity, where you start with very little, you have so much opportunity to chart a path towards excellence. And I think I view it almost in the reverse, as to how maybe other people think about it, because I've had that journey myself, is when you don't have outside expectations and outside structures telling you how things should be, your creative capacity is unlimited, and really allow your creative capacity to look far and wide. See connections and things that nobody else sees. See, the goodness in people who want to be a part of your journey. And use the adversity that you have to really hone your decision abilities, because I know that, I grew up in a single parent household that was very challenging at times. And I learned to see things that peers of mine that grew up with more stability, just they couldn't see it. They couldn't see the connectedness in their environment. And that's a gift. That is such a gift when you're an entrepreneur. So in terms of resourcing, the internet is an incredible place to find resources. I think XTC, for example, is really opening up and casting such a wide net globally. So certainly apply to these XTC opportunities as they become available in the future. And then finally, just my last piece of advice is there's carbon credit markets. Carbon credit markets like Pachama are looking for projects everywhere in the world. And so these are carbon sequestration opportunities that are as simple as changing farming practices in your neighborhood, or planting trees and then getting involved in forestry. So that is literally something that no matter where you are in the world is very relevant right now.
Mm-hmm. There's some really good points. Kimbal, your perspective on this? How do entrepreneurs sitting in, not major innovation hubs get started, access resources, and make progress?
I think that I'll share a couple of lessons that I found quite amazing when I was younger. One of the things that I would do, and again, this is something I did with my brother, but we were both immigrants. We had no network at all here. We were in Canada. And we really wanted to build a network in some form that frankly, we didn't quite know why we wanted a network. We just felt like that was the right thing to do. And it's something that I think if you get someone to do this with, it's quite valuable. It's kind of hard to do by yourself. But what you do is you go through the news in an area that you care about. And let's imagine it's agribusiness, and you're based in Nigeria. There's news that people are definitely talking about things. There's startups out there. There's bigger companies, and if you find someone that you find interesting, you should reach out to that person. And it takes a lot of courage to do this. Why it's nice to, my brother and I would like force each other to pull. We would literally read the newspaper. Who's the most interesting person in the newspaper today that is within driving distance? And we met some of the most wonderful humans out there. Most people say no to the meeting, but some people say yes. And the ones who say yes, those are the ones you actually want to meet. So like sort of hardcore cold networking, I would say is super, super useful and a lesson any entrepreneur should have. And then the other one was be very nice to everyone you meet and do your best to meet everyone you can. Our first financing round for our first company as immigrants in Silicon Valley, we didn't even have proper visas. I mean, we were just, we really did not know what we were doing. Came from a really lovely real estate broker who, a friend of ours was looking to buy a home, and she said, "Oh, tell me about your business, and I might know some investors that might want to look at it." And the angel investor group turned into a VC group, and before we knew it, we were funded. So it just didn't come through the regular path, and just embrace that, because you never know who knows who and how things will unfold. But if you keep working at it and you're nice to people, and you actually go out of your way to get to know them, don't just kind of assume they're going to help you. You'll be amazed what comes out of your network that you already have.
Yeah, be nice is a secret sauce.
Secret sauce.
The secret sauce. Bill, I want to bring you in.
Yeah, I just say this is a worldwide audience, and every year that goes by, you need to be less afraid of trying. So as I think about my early days in Silicon Valley, when it was called Silicon Valley because it was all about silicon, and I moved out here in the 80s when the industry was just forming as a silicon engineer. And at the time, the type of people that would work on those kinds of products were all here, because you needed hundreds of bodies to design these big, semiconductor chips, and you needed a physical place for everyone to be for the industry to even work. So venture capital for many decades, some of the leading venture capitalists of that era would say, never fund anything more than an hour's drive from the office, and they were right at the time, because all the value in the explosive new businesses was happening right here. And the type of people working on those kinds of things couldn't really get traction anywhere else. But I think we're in a world now that is far more distributed, and everything is accessible through Zoom and the internet. And as Kimbal's talking about, you can meet people now that you couldn't meet before. Yeah, like, Steve Jobs used to say, just pick up the phone, and he would call, Hewlett and Packard personally to ask for parts. And they were like, who is this kid? And they would give him the parts, and he'd build an Apple computer, so stuff like that would happen because they just reached out. So I'd say the world is much more accessible, and with that, capital is much more accessible. And I did it, I was kind of experimenting almost 10 years ago to see whether I could kind of break the Don Valentine rule of only fund things an hour away from the office. And, but some of you probably know the story of Melanie Perkins and Canva. I was kite surfing in Perth, Australia, and I met a 20-year-old girl making yearbooks in her mom's living room. And that is now a company worth $40 billion off of seed funding and amassing some engineers around her wonderful spirit and a big market. So anything is possible today. And I'd say the markets in the food space are so big. The opportunities there are marvelous, and they're not going to be dominated by people in Silicon Valley. So I think everyone out there on this call has probably a better chance of winning in these spaces than, the Ivy League or technically educated people sitting in, San Jose or Menlo Park or Palo Alto. So I would just say, per the earlier discussion, find something that moves you, because the passion part matters a lot, because if you're not passionate about it, somebody else is. And if you're there for a mercenary paycheck, the other person's going to win. So find something you're interested about, and reach out to people that can help you, and just, do that fast failing and learn what can go wrong, be resilient, and just try, because the opportunities are now. And if you don't have access to capital, you'd be surprised. It's actually quite a blessing. I know many, many, many entrepreneurs that have access to too much capital, and they just spray and pray on all kinds of stuff that doesn't work, and they burn money and they don't really get anywhere, and they have a false sense of security. When you have a shortage of capital, it's a great blessing because you focus on the few things that are efficient, that really matter. And if you win, you own most of the company. So just, pick those areas and go for it.
I want to echo that. I work a lot in food and have for many, many years. And when I first started, I really thought in the Silicon Valley path of you get funded at a pretty high valuation, and then you work very hard to justify the valuation, which is again a typical path in Silicon Valley, and that has served people well. So as Bill said, sometimes it isn't healthy, but it's actually not just unhealthy in the food world, it's just the wrong investment model. Food is a different timeline. It moves very slowly. It is a much bigger market. I think the software industry, last time I checked, is a $400 billion industry. Food, last time I checked, was an $18 trillion industry. So it's just a different world. And if you apply the same investment approach, so we're seeing this in indoor farming, and I have Square Roots, which our focus there is on young farmers, zero waste, locally grown, things like that that are important to us. And our competitors they're coming at it, and hopefully they're doing good things, but the way they're being funded does not match how food is grown. And so be very careful being food entrepreneurs to listen to the wrong community, because if you want to build a internet company, there's probably nowhere better to learn from than Silicon Valley. But if you want to learn a food company, I'm not sure if there is a what do you call it, a really solidified community of funders that understand the space very well. It's truly a new space. I said years ago that food is the new internet, and I'm a big believer in food. I love food. It's my passion. And watching these incredible companies become public and do incredible things, it's very exciting. And also, they all have to be cautious about how they're growing so that they actually do take advantage of the opportunity, which is a different kind of opportunity than software.
Yeah, and I think that's a segue to bring our founders and get their perspective. I'd love to hear their story. So I want to start with you, Femi. You started Food Locker based in Nigeria. Tell us a little bit about your company, your particular challenges, sitting in that part of the world. And right. As a young entrepreneur, what are some of the advice that you give to others? Nice to see you, Femi.
Nice to see you, Victoria. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm super excited to be listening to everybody on the call. Essentially, Food Locker is a company we started with the objective of building the operating system that makes smallholder farmer in Africa to scale to levels where a smallholder farmer could be as productive and as prosperous as a tech-enabled farmer in the US. Now, typically in Africa, you have 250 million smallholder farmers who are trying to get food to the tables of large corporations and even to families. But unfortunately, these people lack support. Because they do not have access to input, credit, expertise, etc. Now, this then means that we have availability problems, pricing irregularity problems, and therefore there's a $350 billion market projected to grow to $1 trillion in Africa that is currently underserved. So there's huge gaps of food insecurity. And that's why we started Food Locker. I was in the UK. I started basically looking at the size of the market and the kind of frictions that exist. I saw they were so big, and I saw that the problem was compelling. Left Amazon and came back to Nigeria to come and do this. The whole idea is some of the challenges we've faced have been around essentially the fact that you have to build the system from scratch. The supply side is broken, the demand side is broken. We decided we were going to start from demand. And this actually helped us because we then were able to understand what we needed to go and solve on the supply side. Currently, we now have a system that basically allows us to be able to drive tens of thousands of hectares of production through thousands of smallholder farmers, and everything can be remotely tracked. We currently have a 10,000 hectare project that we're running in Southwest Nigeria starting from 2022. And the whole idea is to improve the quality as well as the quantity of food that comes out from the production systems of smallholder farmers. In addition, we then have machine learning algorithms that help us to understand demand in a very unique way. By understanding demand, we can then plan better for the African food systems. So basically my typical advice usually for startups or for people who want to start in Africa is to know that this is a lean environment. You have to be lean, right? Capital is not as ample as you have in Silicon Valley. You've got to do like 10x of your capital in revenues for you to be able to survive. For example, during COVID-19, we were growing. While so many other businesses were shutting down, it was because we were lean. We already had a capital stacked somewhere, and therefore we were able to make the strategic investments in terms of the assets, in terms of securing the markets, etc., while COVID-19 was striking. In addition, I also always advise that people should, Bill was talking about being there at the right time. When we started Food Locker, we built it with the intention of being online first, which meant that when COVID struck, a lot of businesses that relied on offline models of reaching their markets or reaching their customers were basically shutting down while we were growing. And in addition, we already had this idea of being remotely connected to our farmers. And therefore, this helped us quite a lot.
So just seeing that the rapid digitization, right, of the economy, of the service, and I've been on a couple of these calls with you before, and just learning about your history and your story is so inspirational. So Karen, let's go to you next. Tell us a little bit about Sophie's Bionutrients and what kind of tractions you're making, and some good advice for the audience members. Mm-hmm.
Sure. So we are a Singaporean-based alternative protein company with microalgae. And we believe that we revolutionize the way of agriculture is growing but producing protein with minimal amount of resources and space, and to produce maximal output. This is all done under one roof in a bioreactor. And we believe this is the way of future growing protein, particularly with the climate change, the deforestation. So we think that we have a solution for the world who's really hungry for alternative protein or a new source of protein other than animal based or plant-based or other plant-based. So we are really excited on this journey, and the technology is still quite new and it's very advanced. There's a lot of stuff to learn. So we are just taking it step by step and not afraid of failures, like some of the advice that I have mentioned. And we believe someday we can make the difference for the world.
So this is the algae base, right?
This is microalgae based.
Okay.
Yeah. So anywhere in the world, or even on the planet Mars, if there's water there should be algae exist.
So it's taking the algae infrastructure, right, and turning into plant-based protein, and your products on market?
We have test runs of first product, but we have not scaled to the level we want to. Mm-hmm. So we're in the process of working with contract manufacturers in Europe to produce scalable amounts, so enough to make some plant-based meat and plant-based dairy product with multinational food manufacturers.
Mm-hmm. And you're based in Singapore, is a quite mature, innovation ecosystem. I know you're raising a Series A. You're looking for Silicon Valley investors. How have you been able to access that ecosystem? I think obviously having been a finalist at XCC 2021 really helped with that global visibility aspect. But how is that going? What's your approach?
Yeah, so Singapore has become a new center for technology hub. It's probably the best alternative place next to Silicon Valley for innovations. I believe this is because the people here, or in the government, they have the vision to be ahead of trends, and they want to get better. So we have been getting a lot of government support locally from Singapore government. And also we believe that having a great, strong intellectual properties here in Singapore, that allows us, or allows innovations to be continue to grow. So we feel pretty comfortable here in Singapore as a home to generate more of our technology in microalgae.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Great to hear. And then I want to turn to Sarah right now, who's building BeWise from Israel, as one of the most exciting innovation hubs in the world with a lot of resources and support for entrepreneurs. So for yourself and for the youth entrepreneurs in your country, what are the infrastructures that are in place that you think have created best practices to enable, sort of this, wealth of innovation to happen? And particularly around how to build this entrepreneurial mindset about going back to Kimbal said, risk taking and reaching out and making something out of nothing, right? Mm-hmm.
First of all, hi everybody, and thank you for having me. I'm excited and I'm a little bit starstruck as well. I'll just say that, I lived about 15 years in Seattle, which is a Silicon Valley wannabe, and I was pretty plugged into the ecosystem. And about 4 years ago, we moved to Israel to be closer to family. And it's incredible to see how a country has made it a priority to introduce innovation and promote technology. Some of the things that Bill talked about, like risk taking, and Nicole and Kimbal about failure, it's in the DNA of the people here, and it's not only not frowned upon when you fail, it's celebrated and you learn, and there's a whole mechanism. It's almost like a priority driven by the actual government on fail, try out, don't worry. If you fail, there's a network to support you, to catch you, move on to the next thing. And the other thing, I think that Nicole talked about scarcity or lack to capital. And so Israel is a small country with very limited resources that's been kind of in a very stressful situation for generations. And so people grow up here with inherent ability to improvise and to make ends work no matter what. And so that makes for decent entrepreneurs. And so you walk here in the streets and you see people sitting on the sidewalks with their laptops and kind of doing their next startup. And you talk to them and they're like, oh yeah, I have this idea. And the next guy on the street, I have that idea. And they might be out of jobs, but they're working on their next startup. It's pretty incredible to see. Very, very different from the Seattle ecosystem that I was so used to, kind of sitting between Microsoft and Amazon. Very different environment, but fun. And this is where I founded my next startup as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell us a little bit about BeWise.
Sure. So BeWise is a young company. We're 4 years old, and we do one thing and one thing only. We build robotic beehives. Just for some context, 75% of all the global fruit, vegetable, seeds, and nuts are pollinated by bees. But at the same time, 40% of the colonies, the bee colonies on this planet, collapse every single year. It's insane how paradoxical it is that we're screwing up our own global food supply. And it's kind of a derivative of climate change, right? Like ocean acidification and the polar caps are melting. The bees collapse is another manifestation of climate change. And so we've come up with a device that has precision robotics, computer vision, and a lot of artificial intelligence that identifies what the bees need in real time and address it using precision robotics. So in our hives, there is almost no colony collapse, which is amazing. And we're very excited. And I'm humbled at the opportunity to be working with bees, right? To help nature. It's like, you don't get to do that. This is startup number 6 for me. So I'm like, first time in my career, I'm not only happy about what I do, but I feel humbled. I learn every day, and I feel lucky to be doing this.
That's awesome. And it's so great to have you here and highlighting your story. So I want to make sure there's always time at the end for questions, but I want to give the opportunity to our founders first. Questions for Kimbal, Nicole, and Bill from Femi, Karen, or Sarah, and then we'll get to the audience questions.
Yeah, I'll go first. I think my question is essentially to Bill, and that is, how do you, what's your recommendation for startups based in non-capital rich societies?
Oh, it cut out.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Oh, Bill, you're back.
Yeah, it looks like it's going unstable here. Okay, now it looks like you're back. Yes.
Okay.
Say it again. What's your recommendation on what?
Yeah, so what's your recommendation to startups and young founders in communities or society where there's not a lot of capital to solve very difficult problems, especially where the infrastructural systems are broken, the institutional frameworks are not well defined. For example, we had to go and register in Delaware rather than register as a Nigerian company because we wanted to attract foreign capital. How do you sort of advise them to approach raising funding? And I think Kimbal was talking about the fact that they've not really been able to identify a major sort of investment hub that solves food problems, using capital. What's your advice to startups?
Yeah, I think you've already taken some of the baby steps around, like the incorporation in Delaware and things like that. Because I think over the years, as I've started to work internationally, it's definitely been the familiarity that investors have with the U.S. governance and legal systems takes it off the table. People don't even think about writing big checks because it's just they've seen examples of capital intensive businesses that have succeeded. As I started to get into some other things, particularly instead of kind of like fintech, which are very big markets, but having had to deal with companies in markets maybe like Eastern Europe or places like that where people are a little bit suspicious of the governance structures, I'd say there were two things. One are the steps that you're already taking. Set up legal structures where the governance kind of drafts off of known areas. And then secondly, get really good people that are trusted involved. As I started to work in the cryptocurrency space, there was a lot of skepticism about the ability to fund companies overseas in an industry that seemed at one point just filled with very slimy people. I think if you can, and one of the things I did in that case was I started this summit, with Necker Island Blockchain Summit with a bunch of people that were involved in the regulatory frameworks of the United States. So the chairman of the SEC, former chairman of the SEC, former chairman of the CFTC, people from the Justice Department, to shine a very bright light of integrity on that space. So to the extent that you can involve people like that, where their backgrounds, history, reputations are beyond reproach, it's going to help you. But, and obviously you're going to have to run your governance structures in a way that is like A+, even way above the way the US companies run, so that there are no vulnerabilities that people can pick on. But if you do that and you can attract that capital, you're going to be in a position so far ahead of anybody else in your market that you're going to own it. So I think you're already thinking through the right things, and just keep going for it.
Great. Karen and Sarah, any questions?
Yeah, I have a question for Bill too. So being a Singapore startup company, if we want to have access to Silicon Valley investors, should we be looking at establish a office or a company in the US first to get more attraction from the investors?
I think that matters less and less every year. If you had to do that, if you were doing this 5 or 10 years ago, I'd say probably yes. And then in a way it didn't matter because, Singapore has their EDB office here and some other things, and you could actually work out of there. So you could have done it anyway. But I think in this case, it's really just about demonstrating capital. Capital is very fluid around the globe now. And I see companies now. I funded a company based in Singapore, 2 Brazilian guys that moved to Singapore, and they did it because it's a great logistics hub, and they're able to ship anywhere in the world in 48 hours, any metropolitan area. And the company has, I think, a few hundred people in 5 countries, and they have no office. So there are companies now literally born on Zoom, where they don't have physical infrastructure, and they cast a global fabric of people in the markets that they serve. And it doesn't matter as long as you've got traction, so I think show business traction and have clean governance structures, and the capital will flow.
Okay, thank you.
And Karen, I just wanted to also mention, there are family offices getting set up, such as mine in Singapore. We just opened a really big family office there, and are actively looking for companies in this space to invest in.
Okay. Great. I'll look you up.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'll make sure that gets made connection.
Okay.
But Sarah.
I actually have a question for Kimbal, Bill, and Nicole, if I may. You guys inspire so many people, I got to tell you, from different angles. And, you know, those who follow the whole things that are going on in the Bay Area, you know, many things that you do are inspiring and great. So my question to you is, who inspires you? Who's the one live person, so it can't be Steve Jobs, that actually inspires you all?
Well, for me, it's very easy, but I also have my brother. So I would say my brother, of course, but also I have an investor that's become one of my best friends. His name is Antonio Gracias. He works for Valor Equity Partners. And he is the most inspiring he's an entrepreneur, business builder himself because he built his own firm, but he's not really an entrepreneur. He's a coach for entrepreneurs. And I hope that I could become a coach over time, because I just think that's a beautiful skill. And so for me, learning how to be a coach and helping other people succeed is sort of where my long-term desire is.
I mean, Bill and Kimbal inspire me, and Elon and my husband, Sergey, and a woman who advises my foundation, Chloe Coburn, who was an ACLU lawyer and really helped build the criminal justice reform and Black Lives Matter movement in the US. I think these movements are so important right now. And then finally, the entrepreneurs I fund inspire me so deeply, particularly entrepreneurs that are able to receive both venture funding, but also can apply for the carbon credit markets as well. So they're really getting two revenue streams because they have, you know, a private market for their end product, but also because they have metrics-driven carbon sequestration potential, they're also getting carbon credit funding. So those are like the most inspiring companies to me right now.
You know, so I'd have to say that for me, there isn't one person. There's like pieces of different people, and for me, I think I evolved a value system. Like there was about 21 years ago, I retired for a bit. I had this company go public that I had founded, and I just kind of checked out, started kite surfing, and it gave me a lot of time to think about what mattered. And there were three values that I kind of distilled in that, you know, long period of time. And one was stand for something greater than yourself. Two is leave people and places better off when you interact. And third is use your power to empower others. And so I formed this entity that became a nonprofit. Ultimately, those are the three values of our nonprofit. And so as I think about people that inspire me, it's people that touch those elements. And almost nobody touches all three, but a lot of people touch one and several people touch two. You know, and I'd say if there's a couple people that kind of cover the range, I'd say, you know, Sir Richard Branson, he's quite an interesting character because he does touch all those kinds of things. You know, he's not really in it for himself anymore. And he's very inspirational about doing things for people and planet. And he has his brand, which he can use to kind of touch other people and give them a little bit of a push. You know, so I'd say he is one. I'd say Ray Dalio in some ways. Ray, you know, he's controversial in a bunch of areas too, but you know, I think he's a very authentic character. And I think he's that's the other element, I guess, you know, of all those things. I love people that are just really authentic, you know, and not trying to be something for someone else or project a fake image. You know, like if people are just truly who they are, and if you can reach inside yourself and express that, or people that can do that, they're better able to touch a nerve and touch a vibe of a network of people that will ultimately be their supporters. So I tend to be drawn to people that are just like not faking it, you know. The people that fake it till they make it, that's not for me. It's kind of like, you know, do what really matters to you, and that will always inspire me, as long as the people are doing things generally for good.
Mm-hmm. All right, I see we have some questions from the audience. So hello, can you hear me okay? Where do the panelists see largest opportunities for innovation food space? And I also think, what are some of the big levers to make an impact on climate change? from your perspectives? And I know the topic is wide ranging. From production to, alternative protein to minimizing food waste.
So I would say, for funny, I've been doing a ton of research on this space recently. I spent a lot of time years ago and came to a certain set of conclusions. But recently, the biggest impact on climate change in food, it's a very simple solution. I believe it's compost. Mm-hmm. And we have this extraordinary amount of food waste that is happening. It's not going to go away for a while. We got to fix that, and a lot of people are working on fixing food waste. But in the meantime, we have billions and billions of tons of compost, which is food, being put into landfills that, without too much complexity, I mean, there's logistics there, but without too much complexity, we can put it back into the soil. And that, to me, is just such low-hanging fruit in climate change, where you're, first of all, if you put it into landfill, it creates greenhouse gases, and that adds no value to the soil. If you put it into soil, it does not create greenhouse gases, and it enriches the soil. It's unfortunate it's a government level problem where you have to enable governments to do it. New York tried it for a while and had to actually turn it off, and it's logistically hard, but absolutely the most interesting low-hanging fruit out there, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Bill or Nicole? Oh, you're on mute, Nicole.
I have 3 categories that I'm actively looking to fill my portfolio. One is kind of alternative materials that really replace fossil fuel inputs and kind of heavy chemical inputs. So I like natural solutions with a degree of engineering, with proven improved health for consumers. Third category is infrastructure. This is to Kimbal's point. So there's this policy arm to it, but there's also just entrepreneurship needed to help the policy move along. So like compost is a perfect example of something that requires entrepreneurship, but also advocacy. And then the third market I've already mentioned is carbon credits. So I recently bought 36,000 metric tons of carbon offsets. And companies are starting to purchase these too. We need more projects to fund in this space. Like there's a desperate need for more projects. So if you have a project that sequesters carbon and also produces a food product, that I think is like the perfect marriage of innovation.
Okay, you're very specific. So folks in the audience, reach out to me if you have any of those really great innovations in that space. We're coming down to the last 3 minutes. So any sort of rapid fire roundtable, Bill, Nicole, and Kimbal, lasting nuggets of wisdom, your motto.
I mean, for me, I would just say to everyone on the call that this opportunity is a lifelong opportunity. So keep trying to solve a problem that you think exists. Keep trying to build a business around it so that you can sustain it. And if you don't succeed, don't get disillusioned by the space. The space is as bigger as you. It's the biggest space in the world. Don't get disillusioned. Just keep your chin up and keep working on it. You will find your opportunity that turns into a great business.
Bill?
Yeah, I'd say, so somehow over 30 years of venture investing, my timing's getting better and better and better. It wasn't always good, but just lots of failure and lots of learning. And I'd say the reason I'm here is because I think the timing's pretty good. So I'd say keep at it, because I think one of the things that's happening today is that we're at a point where technology, so I always look for a structural change that allows a new emergent leader or set of leaders to come in. And that's happening right now. So I think the application, generally speaking, of technology to this sector is happening right now. So if you think about all the things I've ever done for 30 years in mostly hardware and electrons and hard, physical stuff, it was basically using technology to lower the friction to a use case, make that use case highly replicable, and build an infrastructure that makes it highly scalable. And over decades, that's all I do anymore. When I work on these little companies, if I get those 3 things right, It always works. It's find that emergent use case, so get your little test thing working right, make it really lower the friction to that use case, make it very replicable and a back end that scales. You're going to make money every time.
Great. Nicole, you have the last word.
And make sure to nurture your passion. So it's really important to nourish your internal capacity and continue to build that capacity as an entrepreneur so that you don't run out of energy. So find things that fuel you.
Well, this has been terrific. Thank you so much, Nicole, Bill, Kimbal, Karen, Sarah, and Femi. It's been such a rich conversation. Thank God we captured it on video. So all you missed the live session, make sure you check back on our YouTube channel at World Food Forum and as well as Extreme Tech Challenge. So I want to thank everybody. Follow all of them on social media. I also want to give a plug for Extreme Tech Challenge. Our 2022 competition is now open. Apply, get elevated and get on a global platform such as this. And we look forward to supporting your journey. So thank you so much for everybody joining from all around the world.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.